suggested, and I think 2 or 3 things come very clearly. One is that please do check the numbers from the Indian sources. Second, I think it is very important to understand that the ease of doing business is actually sitting at the state level. So India is not one India, it is multiple states that have, and when Harsha you say that when the investment comes in, it becomes restrictive. So that applies to domestic investment as well. So we should be even more careful. It's not because we follow the most favored nation clause as well as the anti-national treatment. So once they are in, we follow the same policies. But we are shooting in our own feet by not following
we
the right
treat
policies.
everyone badly.
We treat everyone badly. However, the other surprise that comes to us at times is that India is among the 4 or 5 top investment attractiveness for destination for investments, which you have clarified. And interestingly, the World Bank also keeps telling us that you have moved from 130 to 100 and 100 to 77th last time, and this time probably we might find a place in 50s if I think the report is due any time. The fact remains that with all this that is happening, and the scenario that we are seeing is happening to India is also something to be discussed. Probably not today, but a lot of thought has to go to if all this is making India from 100 to 77 soon to 50, and so much of things being done for the ease of investment, we should be seeing India flying at a different heights. That's not the discussion for the day today, but I think I give you around 5 to 7 minutes because we are running short of questions which the audience.
Sure. Well, let me try and just take 2 or 3 minutes then to go through a few things. So I think the first thing I'd like to sort of say and acknowledge is, we've put an index together. Back to your question about how do you deal with all these incomparable issues. The use of the rank 57th is merely a hook to get a conversation going. And for me, it's not 57th is not important. I'm completely with you that when you get to the level of the elements, and what we're talking here is about 20 different elements in investor protections, ease of business creation, property rights, etc. At that level, I think it then becomes much more important and interesting. So I'm with you that at one level for sort of hand-waving public engagement purposes, you've got to start with something at the top level that says 57. People say, well, why is that? But the real conversation is at these policy elements. And we are starting to work on a series of best practices within each of those policy elements and which countries have made the greatest strides forward. So I would say in a year or so's time, we'll be able to have, I think, hopefully a much richer conversation along those lines. Look, with respect to Indian data, I welcome the challenge, and I would say, look, can I engage with you all to get your help to get access to it? I'll say, maybe this is sort of an interesting example of the situation, having tried to get my hands on from the Minister of Commerce, the more detailed data about ease of doing business in states. I struggle to get anything detailed out of them. So, let's work together on that because we're absolutely cognizant, particularly in larger countries like this or in the United States as well, that you have to go down to a level below the federal to see what's really going on. So we're absolutely with you on that. Would love to engage and get your help to do it well. I'll leave it at that to allow the questions from the audience.
Thank you very much, Stephen, and thank you very much, Harsha. And I think first of all, a big round of applause for what you have presented and what has been commented. My role here is just as a moderator. I tried in the beginning saying that we will have enough time, but we still have 15 good minutes to go. If there are questions, please raise your hand, identify yourself, and then ask the question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Stephen. My name is Dr. Rahul. I am from Jawaharlal Nehru University. Thank you very much for your fabulous report also. On a ranking index, there are World World Bank report also about India. I'm not going to talk about that, but I am curious to know what methodology you have used to examine the ranking in terms of an investment environment. In context of India, there are 29 states, and most of the FD is coming to the southern part of India because there is a less political unrest as compared to Punjab. You must have heard of Punjab because Pakistan border is near to that, because I have seen that investment is not coming to Punjab. So it is not my question, but after seeing all this thing and understanding, my submission is that in future research, when you people do it, kindly consider the state's social and political environment also in terms of investment environment, so that we can get clear picture. Like in West Bengal, nobody is coming to invest because there is a lot of political unrest. Like in UP, there is a lot of crime. So like that way. But in Bengaluru, everyone is going. After a gas Bhopal tragedy in 1984, not a single company, I think so, they have directly come and set up their own business here. McDonald's also, they are collaborating and giving franchises. So my submission is there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Two very quick responses to that. One is, let's get the subnational, state level data. Two, when we do our Global Prosperity Index, we cover issues like safety and security, crime, etc., and we find that they are usually the base level things you've got to get right before anything else will happen. So in agreement with you on principle, let's get the data to measure it.
And the good thing is that there are studies available now, and I can discuss.
Thank you.
Discuss
Thank you.
with Yeah.
Hi. So one thing,
Identify yourself.
hi, this is Avik. I'm with the Indian School of Business. So one thing I was observing about the ranks, I was particularly surprised about Singapore because, as he also mentioned, Harsha also mentioned that that governance is a lot of doing things, the operational things right, and doing it very proactively in a nice manner. Singapore is very good in those aspects, but they have a score of 26 on those on that one, and the other 4 are. Is it because of the election and the democratic aspect that it got a lower score?
Yeah, the lack of political accountability. So we have our governance pillar is broader than purely the narrow economic perspective of governance. We take a slightly broader perspective, and that's where Singapore would fall down.
Okay. But there is nowhere that Singapore is not open as an economy. It might be from the political aspect you're telling, which is correct, but openness aspect, they are completely open, both like both Hong Kong and Singapore. There are political issues in both the countries, as you see now, but from the business perspective or from the citizens' perspective, I think there's...
Like I would say, the countries ranked 1 to 10, it's not worth trying to put a cigarette paper between them. They're all very good. The issue really is the mid-ranking countries, and that's where the real information comes.
I'm Anish Sharma from Forrester Research. My basic question is that, that have you considered the global slowdown that is taking place, right now? China is slowing down, every country is slowing down. So in that context, openness is very difficult to, measure at this point of time, because 2 or 3 years of, this type of, volatile environment is not going to give you a very good, picture as far as long term is concerned. And what are your views on the over leveraging, as far as the system is concerned, because we have very low monetary policy, low interest rates and all, but that is not able to, raise the growth targets. In fact, it is leading to over leveraging, as far as the system is concerned. Power companies are in massive debt, their telecom sector, everything, and basically that is why there is a demand side problem. Basically demand is not picking up, and the government is going in for supply side solutions, lowering of taxes and all, low interest rates. That is not giving you right solutions. So your comments.
I'm going to give the same excuse as I gave previously. Our Global Prosperity Index includes an element around economic quality, which will cover more of those macro themes. What we've aimed to do with this particular index is focus predominantly on sort of core policy levers, notwithstanding the fact that sort of macro policy is more of response lever. We've tried to get to sort of the more of the structural ones in this index. So it won't pick it up, except to the extent that in time, we'll see changes in tariff rates and open market access. We'll see changes, potentially in certain countries shrinking, and we'll see changes in terms of soundness of banks if those problems exacerbate. So we'll pick up a few of them, but more of them will be in our economic quality pillar in the prosperity index.
Just to add to what you have said, I'm not supposed to be taking time, but I think what I liked about the report is that it clearly says upfront that it's not macro and monetary and fiscal. They're big things for a country. When I hear about an investment function for India or a macro model for India, sometimes I get nervous, because actually the things are working at the micro theoretical level, and that is what they're doing. They're looking more at micro level, which is micro theoretical level, than at just one, and that's what I think the message is coming clearly, that it's what the micro matters more, and macro obviously is not the result of that, but macro also cannot be discussed in isolation of the real sector.
My name is Sagar. My question is very simple. You have given an economic openness across India, and you have compared it with the other countries. As far as scale is concerned and education is concerned, high-tech education is concerned, we find no mention. So that is the first question. And second question is that when we talk of investment, India, because of its scale, there is high degree of investment. For any big company, we are a good destination, as Nirmala Sitharaman has said in Washington yesterday. My question is that you have the scale of marketing, but if you don't have the education skill, you don't have the high-tech skill, so how far the ease of business goes on? So this second question is to Dr. Harsh. So I would like that these two questions are not appearing in the report, and if these things appear, you find South Korea is at the best. You find Japan is at the best. Even UK is at the best because of their higher education and their investment in the sector of education and health. And our investment in education and health is not to that extent as Germans, France, and UK. So how far we can go and get to this openness in economic corridor? Thank you, sir.
I'll address the second one.
Yeah, I fear I'm going to sound a bit like a scratch record. In our Global Prosperity Index, we do have an education pillar, which captures it. I'm also just checking, we do have, one of the things we do check in our environment for business creation is whether employers regard labor skill, access to labor as a constraint. And from a sort of international benchmarking perspective, Indian employers do not find it an enormous constraint. Now, I think what we may be finding there is that there's a narrow matching of skilled labor and employers who are looking for it, and then maybe a very large mismatch more broadly in society. And I would absolutely recognize that we're probably not picking up the full story here.
Before I answer your second question, just one clarification. You said that India recently reduced corporate tax rates, and that's not the right policy. Is that what you said, or did I answer?
I only said they are going for supply side issues like lowering of taxes, and all, which may be okay, but they are not the only thing,
Yeah. No, it's been acknowledged that the problem right now is demand side.
Yeah.
So supply side is not the answer, but supply side they went, and here I want to link up with the answer to you. India is a good destination for investment, which is there for any large economy. But if you really want to see how strongly you are doing over time, it depends on the structural links between different sectors. So there is an economic complexity in database of Harvard, MIT, Atlas.
Ricardo Hasmus.
Yeah, where actually the potential growth for the next 10 years out of 102 countries which they mapped, the highest was India with 6.9%, 7%. We are doing much less than that today. And foreign investment was not even looking at India in the last phase of the previous government when there were scams and there were governance issues. So large economy is not all that attracts investment. There are multiple aspects. The foreign investors were not even discussing India, leave alone think of projects. So first, if your fundamental system is good, then investment takes an interest to benefit from one of the largest middle class growth areas in the world, which is India. But really large players don't just focus on a single country. They focus as global hubs. So you have very small economies doing far larger economic activity than a large economy like India. There was a time I remember I was speaking on services, trade and services, and a statement I made was that, as far as export of commercial services is concerned, Hong Kong, whose population is less than Delhi, exports more commercial services than India. So, and my thought was, I don't see it as a negative point, I see it as a potential for India. But that potential will take place if you have the right policies. That's where your link with high-tech skills, etc. comes in. At the moment, I could interpret it in two ways. If there were more skills available, maybe more would have come. If these skills are not available in the future, less will come. The skill configuration itself is changing in the world today. With machine-to-machine communication, with 3D printing, etc., it's a very different world which is going to come in the next 10 years. But you have to be in a world where skilling has to continue, perhaps almost like on the job.
So here I would like to make one intervention. When you talk of high scale and artificial intelligence, and then you say it is coming, then when you don't have the high-tech education, you don't have the R&D. When you don't have the R&D, you don't have the artificial intelligence. So we are into a vigorous, vicious circle.
No, I'm agreeing with you. Only thing what I'm saying is that at the moment, India has started to feel that strain. It is having an impact on the thinking of policymakers. But what kind of skilling do we do? If you take a look at Skill India, for example, a large number of people trained were beauticians. Yes. So you have to also take a more micro level decision in skilling, in education.
You have to start from raw material,
So,
actually, for industries. And your industry is not growing because of all this. We are growing in service sector. We are not growing in industrial side because our, R&D from the raw material side is sluggish and it is zero. And that is for the capital machinery.
No, I don't think it's as simple as that.
It is very simple.
No, it's not as simple, because if you don't have raw materials, you can import it. You have to create certain conditions for it. Large investors have access to raw materials. So it's not as easy. Skills and raw materials.
If you don't have the raw material skills.
Sir, there is a distinction between raw materials and skills. So
skills can.
Skills is
I just wanted to add one point to this. So I was at Niti Aayog and we used to look into this aspect very closely. So we looked at two things. One was the ease of doing business, which was more about starting the business, the initial kickstart. But then the sustaining the business depends a lot on these factors that he was mentioning about. And we used to focus on the Global Innovation Index for that aspect, because that does a deep dive on primary education, technical education, college education, formation of clusters, what you talked about, that ecosystem of enterprises, and then knowledge creation and knowledge use in the industry. So all the 7 pillars of Global Innovation Index are actually focused on actually the skill and how the skill is used and used in the economy for sustaining business and making businesses competitive. So that might be a good thing that you can look into.
No, but that doesn't serve also.
No, that's just very loosely.
Let me come. There is a process in India of accreditation of universities and technical places. And I know that process in some detail. What you teach in certain courses also matters. So the point which he made, which is very relevant, is, do you produce engineers which are then useful for the employers? And the large employers in technical areas are finding a need to retrain. On skills, there is a spectrum. If you go to a mobile producing firm, you can train a worker in 1 month, and the worker will be one of the most productive in the world. Actually, India is very productive in that sector. However, if you have a high skill area, you need to spend the correct kind of education on that. And the innovation index focuses on the right concept. But again, this is a question of what is the content.
What are you doing on ground?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
One more question. Last question.
Thank you very much. My name is Maria Nemetman. I'm from the Trade Mission of Israel. The question is regarding the BITs that were cancelled 4 years ago for more than 50 countries, and then the new model was proposed for all those countries with whom the BITs were terminated. So my question is more, I would love to know your observations about how those countries with whom the BITs were terminated are adopting the new model, and do you see any progress and excitement and improvement of investment environment
There is
due to
may I
those?
answer this?
Yeah.
There is a paper, Brookings working paper or whatever it's called, on BITs and how to actually get a landing zone for India, because the model which India has takes a risk-averse position, but takes a position almost an extreme end of the spectrum, while others are looking for something which they are comfortable with. The same way as India wants to be comfortable in FTAs in certain areas, they want to be comfortable with BITs. So BITs, or issues covered by BIT, are covered in two different contexts. One is BIT itself, which is a bilateral investment. One is an FTA. The new FTAs will have features of BITs, because the other interesting thing is, so there's a paper, if you look for BIT, Brookings, etc., you'll find that paper, or you just type my name. I'm one of the main authors of that paper. There is an analysis of how solutions have been found in different parts of other treaties for the landing zone. But the investment part and BITs particularly are evolving even now. For example, the solution in the EU-Canada agreement is very different from the US-MCA, Mexico-Canada-US agreement. So, and the position taken by Europe in terms of a court, etc., and the position taken by US in terms of the features which it wants to emphasize are not necessarily the same. It's something which will have to be case specific then, if it's not in an FTA. And that's where the paper tries to give you a direction that, look, if you go in this manner, then you may be able to get agreement while protecting yourself about the risk which you are concerned about.
How flexible India today with the new model when it comes to signing?
No, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. You have to negotiate and then see.
Well, we are in negotiation.
Yeah, so
New model for almost 2 years. There were
Yeah,
2 rounds.
yeah.
No, 1 round actually. One
Yeah.
in Delhi.
Yeah.
Almost a year ago. I was presenting
yeah,
all 3 days.
yeah.
Incredible experience, I must say.
Yeah, no, experience is incredible.
Yeah, but seems that we are waiting for for the biggest Venezuela.
No, you have to, actually, Israel is working with India at multiple levels. You have huge number of centers of excellence for agriculture technology, for example. So there are different ways of developing your partnerships. The BIT is just a legal structure so that if for any reason there is a policy change which then impacts your investment adversely, you have recourse to law. I mean, that's the primary reason. In the growth of investment agreements, While earlier the focus was primarily industry oriented, now it's also public policy oriented, and that's where India wants to cut down its risks. You may have more interesting experience in future.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have run over some time, and thanks very much for those who stayed and spent their time with asking questions. The only thing I thought that there's no way that such rich discussion can be summarized, but on the skilling part, I just can't resist saying one thing, and that there are serious studies that are fast coming up on skilling India, no time to lose. So you can contact me. I would refer you to a particular study which clearly points out the imparting, the matching, and prospecting of the skilling need of India. This study has been very recently done by the National Council of Applied Economic Research. So wonderful study. You just Google NCAER and say skilling, no time to lose. It's a wonderful new report that has been done very recently, maybe just few months ago, if I may say. So we very mindful. And the second thing that Harsha, what always confuses me, I am not taking more than 1 minute now, is that when we talk of our specialization, our comparative advantage in trade and services, the sorry state that I find when I do research on India is that there is bilateral trade data is missing. I have to rely on some mirror data from third countries to understand our own bilateral trade strengths, particularly when you are talking of 4 modes, etc. That makes it even more complicated. The other thing that always worries me, that people have done it, that how much subsidy we are providing to UK, US, Germany by exporting our best skilled people there, and then trying to discuss whatever is remaining with us, they are not matching the requirement of the high skills. So that subsidy that India is providing to the developed countries is, Devesh Kapoor has computed some numbers there, but one needs to be very careful of skilling the best in IITs, IIMs, and send them. I won't name them. I can name them IIT, IIM, and then somewhere else. So a lot more needs to be discussed, that why are we not creating conducive conditions within our own country to create what you said, sir, R&D and innovation. Whenever I am talking about $600 worth iPhone being exported by China, and assembly lines, and we could have been a part of the assembly lines, I am fired immediately by saying that, oh, out of that $600, $300 or $250 is going to as royalty to Apple. Then what? They created jobs there. We are not even creating jobs here. Royalty is too far away thing when we start doing something fundamentally R&D and IPs. That
no, R&D in mobile sector is not going to be done in India.
No,
it's
not
complex.
mobile. I said R&D.
No, since you gave the last example, that's all I'm saying.
So no, I was not as mobile. I meant overall.
Yeah. No, you're
Yeah,
right.
right.
But there's literature which shows what are the incentives for R&D, and the economic situation. We actually have very intense R&D work in certain areas in India. We have the top research being done in it is biotech. It is linked to certain other high technology kind of things. But in general, in developing economies, much research is not done unless there is a specific focus created with government assistance on it, and it has to be combined kind of effort, and that's where there are plenty of
absolutely. That's what we have suggested in a paper.
Yeah.
But this is where I'd say, I think, earlier on this, I think it was Monday, the Nobel Prize for Economics was announced, and while Duflo and Banerjee got a lot of the PR, I think with respect to this discussion, Michael Kramer's work is far more relevant, and thinking about the fact that when you have complex processes and multiple skills, the compounding effect of getting them together right is critically important. But I'd take it a stage further, Harsha, with your reference to Hausman's work on economic complexity. I think there's an important issue for large or geographically large countries that needs to be taken into account, which Ricardo has done in some place, which says, look, you really have to think about this at a city level. Because if you want to get that sort of, combination of skills, there's no point having it in Hyderabad, Delhi, elsewhere. You have to have all those skills together in one place. And that's where the Singapores and Hong Kongs have a great advantage.
Perfect. I think with that, I thank you very much, Dr. Stephen. Thank you very much, Dr. Harsha. Thank the audience for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you once again.